Welcome to Congregation Va-Dor's Touch of Torah, our Torah study with a rational approach given by Rabbi Barry Silver. We are February 14th, 2023, St. Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day to everybody. I'm wishing love and peace and shalom to everyone. Take it away, Rabbi. Exodus MISHPATIM today.
Thanks a lot, Sharon. Thanks for all you do to make this program and so much possible at Va-Dor. It's great to be here with everybody. We're talking about a fascinating passage. It's called, as Sharon says, MISHPATIM. It means the judgements, sometimes translated the rules. Since I'm a rabbi and a lawyer, it's probably a good topic for me to be discussing. I'm very familiar with rules, and also I'm pretty familiar with how to break some of them when necessary. It's always important to follow the rules, except if they lead to injustice. And there's a quote by Arnold Schwarzenegger, and he says the 6 most important things to do in life. And he says, be your own person and follow your dreams, and don't be intimidated by others, and do your best, and break some rules once in a while. So these are the rules, and usually they make a lot of sense and we follow them. But I would suggest also that MISHPATIM has some of the greatest moral pronouncements that we've ever seen, thousands of years ago, transcending things that we have today. The Bible is a mixture. It's got some things that are rather primitive and barbaric, but shining through are some of the most stellar and beautiful and lofty ideals. One of them is it says that if you see the animal of your enemy suffering under a burden, and your inclination is to say, good, glad to see him and my enemy suffering. It says, resist that inclination and help the animal with your enemy to relieve him of that burden and lift him up. What the Torah is trying to say, the animal is considered obviously lower than a human, and the enemy is the last person. So it is trying to say, in biblical language, what that means is that if you see anyone, no matter what the situation, any person or any animal or any living thing suffering, help them. What a beautiful, lofty ideal it is. It also says something else that's rather remarkable. It says that you should not lean over backwards to assist the rich in their disputes. You should judge them the same as anybody else. And not only that, but the poor person also, you should judge them equally. You shouldn't just rule in their favor because they're poor. Yes, you should take into account their financial situation and pressures they might have, but you still must rule justly, no matter what. It also says, don't follow a multitude to do evil. And something which is extremely important in this day of internet bullying, don't follow after a multitude to do evil or to chastise the innocent or to say terrible things about people. Because if you destroy a reputation, it's like taking a life. It says, don't follow the multitude to do evil. These pronouncements could improve society vastly if people follow them. In my opinion, they far transcend the 10 Commandments and their loftiness. And they also have some of the things in the Torah that are very primitive that we should have outgrown, but sadly, often we have not. It says, for instance, that a sorceress or a witch should be put to death. And this resulted in tragedy, not only with the Salem witch trials, but the death of women throughout Europe, because maybe they were elderly, or maybe someone had a grudge against them, or maybe they were using medicinal herbs and the priests of their day wanted a monopoly on healing people. And so this also was used in a very malicious way. That's why at Va-Dor, we interpret the Torah in a non-literal fashion. If we interpreted it literally, it would be a chamber of horrors, enough to make the Taliban blush. It also has in the Torah things about executing people for picking up sticks on the Sabbath. In this passage, it says that if someone is worshiping a false god, in other words, someone other than our God, Fortunately, it doesn't say to kill them in this passage. It says they shall be banished. They shall be banished from the Jewish community, which is a pretty good way of ensuring that everybody thinks the same way. If you get rid of anybody who thinks differently, then you ensure conformity. Modern Jews, especially Jews at Va-Dor, we don't do this. We welcome people who think differently. We invite the Orthodox. We invite the Chabad. We invite the Christians. We invite people of different religions to come and join us in dialogue. That is how we advance as a people. Sadly, there are Jewish denominations that don't see it that way. They disregard Jewish history and the essence of Judaism captured in the Talmud and in other sacred books, where the whole idea is people discussing from different vantage points various points of Jewish law and Jewish custom, even discussions about God and his existence. And in that way, it provides enlightenment. We have reached out to the traditionalists among us. And if anyone here belongs or is part of or is friendly with a Chabad congregation or Orthodox congregation, I urge you to ask your rabbi if they will engage in dialogue, if they will engage in joint activities. Because sadly, we see that the Jewish people has an incredibly important mission to bring about the unity of the Jewish people in order to bring about the unity of all people. We cannot bring harmony throughout the world if we can't even talk to each other. It's not possible. So if you know people like that, please invite them, or let them know that we extend to them our invitation to engage in dialogue and also Jewish unity. Our goal is unity without uniformity, community without conformity, and diversity without divisions. That doesn't mean that we don't have things to say that might be negative towards other denominations of Jews or towards other religions. We believe that the best way to improve is to cite errors and faults and to engage in dialogue to see if we can fix them. And so I will leave it at that at Va-Dor and I personally welcome any critique, any criticisms, any points of view that are different. And if you think that we are not following a rational path, by all means, let us know. I do apologize for apparently my computer screen, the screen isn't all that great. It flashes and things like that. So I do apologize about that. I'm going to see what I can do. But hopefully you've been able to hear what I've been saying. And I should also mention this. I don't know how I overlooked this. We just got off of a really wonderful occasion where congregation Va-Dor joined forces with the National Organization for Women and made a strong statement for women's rights. We do believe that as modern Jews, women's rights and Jewish rights are synonymous, and we believe in equality. And it was really a wonderful thing to have a lot of our congregants come out in large number to support the National Organization for Women. The men in our congregation became members, and I'm hoping that this will be an alliance that we forge not only with them, but also with other women's groups, with environmental groups, with other Jewish groups, and with all those who share our goal of trying to improve the world. This particular Friday night, the Torah reading MISHPATIM has a passage that is in our lawsuit. It is a passage that sheds light on abortion rights. And it says if two men are struggling in a fight and they injured a woman, bystander, the one responsible pays a penalty, a fine. And if the person dies, then you pay life for a life. But if she's pregnant and miscarries, then you pay a fine. Now, the passage just said you have to pay a life for a life, but if she miscarries, it's a fine. Therefore, the fetus could not possibly be considered a human life, according to this passage in Exodus 20. And that passage made its way into our lawsuit, in which we argue that according to Jewish law, a fetus is not a human being, and it never transcends the rights of a woman. And that's part of our argument, Exodus 20. I do encourage you to come out to our service this Friday night. I will be talking about that passage as well as the wonderful relationship we have with women's rights groups and the issue of women's rights and how that ties in directly with Jewish rights and what we ascribe to. The law in Florida that says you can't get an abortion after 15 weeks outside of extremely minute circumstances, which are virtually impossible to prove. That law not only denies women their rights, it denies Jewish rights. It criminalizes the practice of Judaism, and therefore we oppose it. We will be talking about that in no uncertain terms this Friday night. And we also might mention the fact that the governor sees fit to deny women's rights, Jewish rights, and to tell African Americans how they should teach their history. He's certainly entitled to his view on these issues, but to try to silence the discussion in a university and say that only certain views can be taught that coincide with his, that is a violation of what we consider to be the role of the university, which is to have a robust discussion. I personally have some issues with the way Black history is taught by some of the Black activists. They teach things that I don't think are terribly helpful or healthy. I have my issues, but I certainly wouldn't say that they should be prohibited from teaching that and engaging in a discussion about that, just as the state of Florida shouldn't prohibit Jews from practicing their religion. So we'll be talking about that. Some people think that it's a bad thing for the rabbi to discuss these issues. In our congregation, we happen to believe that in order to advance the goals and the values of Judaism, it has to be done in the public square. That if what we say doesn't leave the confines of Va-Dor Va-Dor, and all we're doing is talking to ourselves, and then it has no impact on shaping policy and trying to fight injustice, we're really, I won't say we're wasting our time, because we do get to have some nice food, and we do get to hear the Torah, and we do get to hang out together, and listen to some nice music. That's all good. But I think one of the most important things is to use that experience of Shabbat in order to go out and make the world a better place. Certainly, that is the goal of progressive Jews such as Reform, Reconstructionists, Humanistic Jews, and those branches all heavily impact and shape the way we operate at Congregation Va-Dor Va-Dor. As I say, if there are some people who think, and I've been told this, that it's none of my business and I should remain silent about such things, I'm very open to hearing those sentiments and to having a discussion about why we do these things. And the board is probably interested also in knowing, because the board establishes guidelines and they also set some precedent, which a lot of times the rabbi actually pays attention to. So I would like to open it up now to any discussion that you might have. It's too bad also that the referee at the Super Bowl didn't consult with MISHPATIM, because it says that you should always be fair and just, and that call at the very end, that holding call, doesn't seem to really comply with the ideals of MISHPATIM, of fairness. But that's another issue. Anyway, I open it up now for your comments and discussion and your input, because that's what makes this an interesting program in Torah study. So the floor is open to everyone. Yes, Ginny.
Okay, it's me. I just want to say that one of the main reasons I joined this congregation from afar is because of you, because of your willingness to discuss current things that are going on, your willingness to accept people with different beliefs. And I really, really get a lot out of it. And I look forward to it all the time. And I enjoy your comments. I agree that I do know that there are other congregations that don't, but that's fine. That's not my belief system. I think it's important. And I look to a rabbi as somebody who can espouse interesting and controversial comments and topics, and it's food for thought. And I just like the rational approach. I like the intellectual approach, and I'm very happy to be a part of this congregation.
Well, we are very happy that you are a part of this congregation. Thank you so much for your comments. And yes, we do appeal to the rational mind, and not everybody's really into that, but I'm so glad that you are, and many people are receptive to this approach. Some people think that the role of the rabbi is more to indoctrinate and to brainwash people, especially children, to thinking a certain way. I happen to find that abhorrent. I actually consider the indoctrination of children to be a form of mental child abuse.
I agree.
I think that children should be free to develop their rational mind in ways that they are able to bring out their own individuality. And I think it's very sad. We see this among traditional Jews and Christians and Muslims and others, where the children are considered to be the playthings and the subjects of their parents' indoctrination. And not only that, I'm sure you're probably aware of this. There are also parents among the traditionalists who will withhold their love, withhold their financial support, withhold their contact with their children if their children do not toe the line and say what the parents want them to say and believe the way they want them to believe. And I was in a debate once with an Orthodox rabbi, and he told me that if any of his children married anyone who is not Jewish, he would cut them off and had nothing to do with them. And he earlier he said he loved his children, and I said, that's a very peculiar form of love that you have, which is so conditional that your love is only offered if someone decides the most important question of their life, who they're going to marry according to your wishes. And so we may not have the most followers at Va-Dor Va-Dor, but I do believe that we have some of the most sincere and dedicated Jews and people who are really committed to making this world a better place. And so I thank you very much for your support.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to weigh in? Valerie, go ahead.
I have a very close relative of mine. I think I've mentioned this previously, who's part of a Chabad. The children, the 3-year-old little girl, 5-year-old little girl dresses like an old lady. She's covered from head to toe. They're having a big ceremony because they have the boy, and they're going to have a big ceremony with it, cutting his hair after he's 3 or 4 years old. And there's a big ceremony. And when they moved from one Chabad in Texas, they moved up north to a different Chabad. And it seemed to me, even with their dietary, requirements, they wouldn't eat certain things until, believe it or not, they checked with the rabbi if they could eat this. And I said, well, you ate this before when you belonged to this other Chabad. Oh, well, this rabbi feels differently. And it seems to me one of the issues that I have with this particular branch, if you will, is almost cultish. It's almost as though each rabbi has their own little fiefdom, and they bend the portions and the readings and the laws to suit what it is they believe. There seems to be nothing across the board. There's no cohesiveness. So for you to try to get one of these people to discuss anything with you, they don't even agree with each other. I mean, they won't let go of their congregation, if you will. It's almost as though they have a death grip on them. And I was very surprised because my relative is a very educated, intelligent person, and yet she buys into this whole thing. And I'm just stymied. It just absolutely boggles my mind because she wasn't brought up like this. So I don't understand, and possibly you could shed some light. Is that considered brainwashing? And what about the children now? I'm really concerned.
It's the two of you are not the only ones who have observed that there's a lot of similarities between Chabad and a cult, and the loyalty to the rabbi. They look at him like the representative God on earth. In fact, many of the Chabad look to a Rabbi Schneerson as the Messiah and think he has a direct pipeline to God. And I was told that a Chabad rabbi wouldn't join with me in dialogue because Schneerson said that they shouldn't discuss things with non-Chabad and non-Orthodox as they would become contaminated with false ideas, which
Well,
it's
may I
all
just
part of
say also they would not, they made a trip up to New York to visit Schneerson's tomb, if you will, because they wouldn't get married until they went there and got the blessing of the Orthodox rabbis around him. And I said, but the man is dead, number one. But they wouldn't get married until they got approval from that particular branch. I was
Yeah,
absolutely stymied.
yeah, they give the fundamentalist Christians a run for their money as far as blind obedience and irrational behavior. I'll tell you something else that occurred to me that was sad for me as someone who loves sports. I was on a cruise, went off to one of the islands, and you know, the Chabad have their little setups like all over the place. And so there was a Chabad there. And I went to visit, you know, because I mix it up with everybody and I like to talk to people. And I went and I saw their child, the child of the rabbi and the rabbi's wife. And he was out in the back and he had this makeshift soccer field. He set up a couple of garbage cans and he was playing soccer back there. And I love soccer. I played soccer. I coached soccer. So I went back there and I was playing soccer with him. And he was pretty good. So I said, oh, I'd love to have your parents come back and watch us play. She said, my mother has never seen me play soccer in my life. And I said, but you're so good. Why is that? She thinks it's a waste of my time. She doesn't like that I play soccer. And I almost had tears in my eyes hearing this. And I went to her and I asked her, I said, would you come back and watch? And she did. And she watched and she smiled and she saw how he was alive and it was really good. I do also want to share this with everybody, that I believe that each denomination in Judaism and each religion has certain things that are very, very positive and certain things which are negative. To me, the cultish behavior and irrational thinking is far more significant than any of the positives. However, I will say this about the Chabad. They have very, very good techniques as far as making people feel welcome. They offer lots of stuff for free. They offer lots of free meals and things to entice people to come in. Their families are often very close-knit and very loving. The rabbi often works hand in hand with the wife and in a family type setting, and they do make people feel welcome. And so I do believe that there's a lot that can be learned from the Chabad. Many people think the reason why they make them feel welcome is the same reason they do at Dennis Franrath Chevrolet, is because they're trying to sell something and they want to get people to come in and make donations. And it's part of, you know, when you go to a cult, they do something called love bombing. They welcome the newcomers in and welcome. So, you know, you could say, well, there's ulterior motives to it, but they do help some Jewish people affiliate who otherwise would not. But in my opinion, if they're affiliating with a type of Judaism that's subverting the rational mind and not engaged in issues that are going to help advance the Jewish people and the world, then they may be benefiting Chabad. But the question is, are they benefiting the Jewish mission of improving the world? And I do open up the conversation also to others who would want to say something different about Chabad. As I say, it's a mixed bag. I have deep respect for people who are very much committed and dedicated and devote their lives to a particular point of view, even if I don't share it. Anybody else want to jump in on this or the Torah reading or anything? Oh, Wendy, go ahead. Wendy, you're muted. There you go. We hear you.
I have had Hasidic relatives my whole life because a close uncle was Hasidic and he lived in Brooklyn. We were in Queens. We saw them frequently. And I was used to that their lifestyle was different. And they accepted that we were different. My aunt would always ask me, so you have a new boyfriend? though her kids didn't date. And I can remember when they had a boy and a girl, when the boy stopped hugging mommy when we would come over. He had reached that age. But just like with all the other cultures, you know, that we see around the world that have things that some people find beneficial in the culture, and we look at it as strange, this works for them. I remember when my uncle was dying, they wouldn't take him off life support when he was like 93, 94, and 3 organs were failing. And it was what Valerie is saying. They had to wait till the rabbi came, you know, to make that decision. But that's the first time in the whole time that we knew them that I personally experienced a conversation that said, you know, any of that. I know whenever I went to Chabad, I haven't gone in a long time, they were always very welcoming. And I know some people in our congregation do go to Chabad activities. And I know there's a lot of people who grew up Orthodox and kosher, who aren't Orthodox now, but maybe still keep kosher, you know, and they'll go to Chabad. Some of it has to do with that they're cheap and they don't want to pay to join, you know, something. But Chabad, being it has the money behind them, can, you know, afford to do that. But I understand what Valerie's saying about the brainwashing, and but some of these people are, you know, they're very bright, and they went on to, granted, they don't have careers like we do, but they have careers where they might stay more with their own or work in smaller groups. But if they have a bright child, they still pursue it, whether it's in that child's school or giving them more at home. I just think it's very different. But one other thing, Rabbi, you said that this particular person that you knew, I don't remember if it was a rabbi, that said if one of their kids married a non-Jew, he would disown them.
Yeah.
For a lot of people, and he may not have gone through the Holocaust, but I came from a family of Holocaust survivors. And for the ones that had children that married non-Jews, it was very, very hard for them. I know my mother had a lot of difficulty when I seriously saw somebody who wasn't Jewish, but he was atheist. At least he celebrated all the holidays I did. And she was very nice when he was around. But, you know, I knew from the whole family that I would be out of it, which was very hard for me, because on a 1 to 10, you've heard me speak about my mother and how much I adored her. Since I didn't end up marrying somebody who wasn't Jewish, I don't know what, you know, if she would have given in. But a lot of people who, you know, you hear about the people in the war who turned to Catholicism, did this, who did that. You know, my mother looked at those people about, you know, how dare them, especially when we stood our ground, we suffered. So for a lot of these people, it's a total betrayal. They look at it very differently than you. And your parents, I think, came from America. Maybe I'm wrong. But if they were born here and not in Europe, it's a different mindset. And even if we don't understand it, and I agree that it's not good, but the Jews that survived, you know, probably wouldn't have survived if they, you know, they had to have a certain mindset that they're surviving so that they can keep on producing more Jews. You know, my Hasidic uncle takes pride in the fact that even though he only has 2 children, he's got 22 great-grandchildren, because each of them had 5 kids. And yes, they're not on welfare. They at least are paying their bills, but, they, like, see, Hitler, he didn't get us.
Well,
I'm sure.
I would like to respond to what you're saying. As far as the fact that they're different is no problem. We support diversity, and having different points of view among Jewish people is no problem. But when you say, well, they're different and this works for them, as if every philosophy is equally valid, I would totally disagree with that. And if something works for them, I'm not sure what working means, but any parent who would cut off their children because they married the wrong person, I don't know in what sense it works for them, other than working for them, meaning that they coerce and bully people to do what they want them to do by indoctrination and also and means that are very, very harmful. Brainwashing,
Let me ask you a question. If it wasn't Judaism that was at stake, and I'm not asking you personally, but putting it out to the group, if one, not you specifically, had a child that got very messed up with drugs or in and out of jail, that kind of a thing, you hear people like that, disowning their children, not wanting to take their kids back, not forgiving them. Do you see that as very different? And how do other people feel?
Well, of course it's different. If you're gonna punish your children or treat them differently because they're doing something immoral or that's destroying their life with drugs, that's totally different than marrying someone outside the faith or leaving Orthodoxy. Do you know what happens to someone who is raised Orthodox and they say, I'm not Orthodox anymore? Do you know what happens to them? You've seen it. I mean, how disgusting. They're thrown out of the community and the community has nothing to do with them anymore. They're like a shanda. You have to toe the line and be indoctrinated, otherwise they have nothing to do with you. This is odious to free thought and free thinking. It's not just different, it's something that we should criticize and condemn, especially when it's done in the name of Judaism. We have fundamentalist Christians who teach things about Jesus that are irrational and nonsensical and often anti-Semitic. That's bad enough. We have people espousing all types of philosophies that are harmful. But when it's Jewish people who are using Judaism in order to indoctrinate and by the way, to deny evolution, to deny science, to deal with to refuse to accept reality, to not engage in protecting the environment or supporting abortion rights and women's rights and gun control. By the way, who was it that were the prime supporters of the worst president we've ever had in the history of the United States?
Orthodox Jews.
Orthodox Jews. Why is that? And why would they do that? If not because their mind has already been subverted and softened by irrational indoctrination, they're ripe for the picking for the next charlatan that comes along and says, I'm the king of the Jews, or whatever he said. You're setting people up in order to be indoctrinated by the next charlatan that comes along. So we need to encourage rational thought and not just say, well, it's different, so who cares? In Judaism, we have two main goals. Keep this in mind. Emet v'tzedek. This is a very strong statement. Emet, meaning truth, means that we Jews believe in objective reality. We believe that there is truth out there. In the old days, truth was determined by God. God just established what truth is. Today, we say that there are certain universal ideals, certain principles, certain values that we cherish, and certain physical laws that are true. And that if you don't accept these, then you can fall into error. Many people don't accept that. Many people think everything's subjective. Hey, whatever you want to believe, it's all good. There's no such thing as reality. You can believe anything you want, it doesn't matter. We Jews don't believe that. We believe in objective reality and truth and Jewish ideals, kindness and compassion and love and harmony. And we also believe that those ideals are necessary for tzedek, for righteousness. If we don't deal with truth, we can't get to righteousness. If we don't understand reality, then we can't see the harm of what we're doing. We're a danger to ourselves and others. So it's very important that we use our critical faculties, and also, but to do it in a way that is welcoming and accepting. And that's very hard to do. But if you think that someone is not following a path that's helpful to them or that is accurate, you could have nothing to do with them. We all have people in our family and we have friends who we think are making a bad mistake. We think that they're going astray. We think that they're harming themselves. You can handle it two ways. Most people are going to say nothing. The Torah reading this week in MISHPATIM says, if you think that someone is going astray, talk to them. Deal with them. Try to help them. If you think a multitude is going astray, speak up. Many people don't do that. Judaism, and this particular passage, MISHPATIM, says it might be dangerous. You might be risking the equanimity that you have with that person. But if you care about the person in a kind way, try to help. And I'll just say this also before I know somebody else had their hand up. When somebody disagrees with you or you think that they're doing something wrong, you can go after them in two ways. You can come after them in a hostile way and say you're wrong, and you can be harsh, and that never works. But you can gently point out positive things and then help them to try to see another point of view. Most people aren't receptive to it, but at least we can try. I know somebody else had a hand. I think Valerie, did you want to say something?
Well, getting to that, I mean, I have something in my personal life too, and it's gone on for years, that there's this one particular person that's really made every bad decision that you could possibly make. And I'm going back for years. And you talk to them and you're your friend and you try to help, whether it's financial or whether it's reaching out or whether it's trying to help. And you've helped them and you've helped them and you've helped them. At what point, Rabbi, do you, not you personally, but you, the collective, do you have to finally just say, you know something, this has gone on and on and on, and it pains me now to watch this person continuously have the means if they decide to make these difficult decisions. And I've spoken to this person. I said, sometimes you've got to make those difficult decisions in order to move forward. And it's gone on and you try to help them and it just doesn't work. At what point do you as an individual need to step back and say, I can't do anymore?
Well, Valerie, MISHPATIM doesn't say what that point is, and it's up to each person to figure that one out. But I think you've gone beyond the call of duty in attempting to speak to the person, attempting to share your thoughts. And if it happened over and over again, then you certainly have responded according to MISHPATIM with flying colors. I mean, you've done the right thing. You don't have to keep. After a while, it becomes pestering and badgering, and the person, if you know that they're not interested in it and it's not welcome, then obviously there comes a point where you need to back off. And that point could be reached very quickly, depending on the nature of the relationship and how open-minded they are. Anybody else want to share some thoughts or comments about this passage or anything else? Well, before we go, I do want to let you know there are new developments in the case that we have against the state of Florida in the abortion case. I will be sharing those with everyone on Friday night. So I'm encouraging people to come out. It's going to be a nice follow-up to the luncheon we had with Now. We'll be talking about abortion rights and also MISHPATIM, the very high calling that we have to follow a moral code in Judaism. That's really I would say it's about the most important part of being Jewish, the moral code. And it doesn't get any better than MISHPATIM. So we'll be talking about that. But I also, I'm not going to dwell on it, but I will mention the new developments in the abortion case that I think you'll be interested in hearing. And you might want to invite your friends to come and join with us. Oh, by the way, I'll also share something else with you that I just found this out 10 minutes before I went on this Zoom call. And I think Sharon and Stanley and Valerie and actually everybody will, but the leaders of our congregation will want to know that Grand Villas really, really likes what we're doing. And they've asked us to have a Passover Seder at Grand Villa for their people and our people. And they're fairly flexible on the date. So I'll be speaking with our board about that possibility. But I was joking around with my wife because she was listening in on the call. So I said, you know, we want to get feedback. So could you tell me what people are saying? Are there any criticisms or critique? And she said, you know, we have a lot of people here who are very demanding. And if they see anything wrong, they'll criticize. We haven't received one complaint about anything that you've been doing. So I said to her, I must be doing something wrong because if I'm not saying something that somebody disagrees with or gets upset about, then I'm probably not doing my job. But I just want you to know that things look pretty good over at Grand Villas. It's a really nice relationship. I congratulate the board on having the wisdom to accept this type of relationship for now. And it is interim. We will have our own place. That is our goal, but it's working out well. And we'll keep you posted about Passover and other things that are coming up. So I'll close out with that. And Stanley, our president, you might want to have some comments that you'd like to share. I love the Ukrainian flag there. And then we'll have Sharon, you can close it out if you'd like. Stanley, do you want to share any thoughts?
Sure. Well, not to belabor the point about Chabad, they offer something that people seem to gravitate to, because they have Chabads just about everywhere. So, and I don't think it's due to free lunch. There's no free lunch anywhere. So I wouldn't write off Chabad's value. I think it has it has a community value. It has a Orthodox value. It's not our thing, but that's okay. I think I've mentioned once before that the tent that we're in should be as big as we can make it to accommodate all flavors, varieties of Judaism, and maybe even non-Judaism. So Chabad is to call it a cult. I would that's a stretch. I don't think so. I think they're just practice their religion as they see fit. We may not understand it or like it or even agree with it, but they're entitled to it.
Well, I was just say this. I think we understand it very well. I think the people who have spoken understand exactly what Chabad's all about. And the two people who spoke out and me, we're not the only ones who have noticed its cult-like features. I mean, this is something that has been noticed by Jews across the board. And if you wanted to check off what constitutes a cult, they check off every box. As far as being popular and filling a need, they do offer free food, free membership, often free bar mitzvahs. I do lots of weddings, bar mitzvahs, so I deal with lots and lots of people. And I hear from people who have affiliated with everything. And the main reason why people tell me they affiliated with Chabad is because it's a free lunch or free whatever. That's the main reason. Now, when they get there, they say, well, sometimes, you know, they're welcome there and they feel like they're part of a community. But that's the fact that a lot of people are members has nothing to do with its validity or whether it's a positive influence. There are lots of people who are fundamentalist Christians who are doing some really bad things. There's lots of people who support really horrible candidates. There's lots of people who believe things that are really awful. So I've never been impressed with numbers. I have never been impressed like, well, a lot of people believe this, so I guess it's okay. Or they're entitled. Of course, they're entitled to their beliefs, but we're also entitled and required as Jews to form moral judgments and to try to determine what is helpful to our people and what is not. Most people have within their group certain elements which are going off doing crazy bad stuff and other elements that are doing good things. And the problem is in most groups, they have the attitude, well, it's part of our group, so I won't say anything. And that's when bad things start to happen. So Mishpatim is really telling us, don't follow after a group that's not doing good things, even if a whole bunch of people are doing it. It's not necessarily to say that Chabad's doing bad things. I happen to disagree with what they're doing and think it's harmful, but what it's saying is that don't be impressed by the fact that a lot of people are going in a certain direction. Go in the direction that's moral and just. That's what Mishpatim is really telling us.
Right.
Hey, it's been great speaking with everybody. And I look forward to seeing you hopefully on Shabbat. I think it's going to be a great service. And Sharon, feel free to close us out.
Yes, I'd like to invite everybody to this Friday evening Shabbat on February 17th, our new member Shabbat. And we're going to be honoring all of our newest members of Va-Dor. Jenny Scott is one of them.